Hi, George Durkee in Geography 66, our Columbia College Web Maps and Web Apps class. And in this set of videos, I'll be going over how to create a web map, and then from that web map, you'll create a web app. And I'll go over the workflow for that. And so just some housekeeping notes here. Uh, for instruction methods, as I put into the Canvas outline of the class, it'll all be by these YouTube videos as well as some readings I'll have you guys do. And as far as assignments and due dates, each separate video, for instance, has a due date. That's essentially a suggestion. There's not anything you have to actually turn in until the the web map itself and then the web app. Those are the actual things you turn in. And that'll be true throughout the entire course. So unless I specifically say in the assignment that something specific is due and put it in the text of the assignment, then I just want you to do that. And I've just made an estimate of how to pace yourself through the class. But you can do everything at your own pace, and that works out great. And I put a due date on, say, a video, but that's just how Canvas works. And so it's a suggestion, but I think you ought to stick to my general outline. The second thing is here, I'm revising this class heavily. ArcGIS Online, their web map app, last year. They've been leading up to it, but they have now what is called Web Map Classic, Web Viewer Classic, and it's been replaced. And so last year we had both running at once. My instructional material was written for the older app, and then when they updated it and made it the default, there was a teensy bit of confusion. Everybody, got through it, and I did some supplemental videos so that they could be a bridge between the two apps. But in any event, so I'm revising the whole thing. I'm making some new types of maps, and so when I do that, I make my best guess on what folks can do in a reasonable amount of time within the 4 weeks we have. But I'm pretty conscious of, okay, maybe this is too much for most folks. So definitely keep me updated if you start falling behind and flailing. And, then several things can happen pretty easily. I can help you either via a Zoom meeting. I'm not gung ho on meeting, but I think we could do that. I'm kind of on in years and I'm trying to avoid getting COVID. But we can usually do this on Zoom and with remote control, and I can definitely help you. And quite often, just an email works to solve your problems. And also, whenever I do a revision, there might be a glitch, something I miss in the instructions that isn't clear. So, make absolutely sure that you write me and say, okay, I didn't quite follow this, or this is missing, and I will definitely re-revise and make sure that everybody knows about any mistakes I make. And next is that, and I'll repeat this again, but the way you get into our teaching materials to create that is college GIS account. And if you're already a GIS student and have an account, absolutely great. Continue using that. Or, I don't know, if you want to use a brand new account, send me a note. I will have gone through all of the students looking up to see if you have an existing account. So I will only send brand new students without a GIS account a login where you create your password to sign in. And if I missed you, get a hold of me right away, and I'll send out another one. Or if you, I don't know, messed up the login again, send me a note and we can solve that pretty quickly. In this video, I will go through step by step signing into the Columbia College site, a couple of folder setups I'd like you to do, the dashboard where you can find other apps we'll be using, and uh, and then opening a map. And we'll do a little bit on a map, and then I'll end this first video, and we'll then go on to bringing data into that map. And then throughout the rest of this series, we'll add to the map and then get to creating the app. Now let's take a look at the workflow for creating a web map and a web app. Now, the two things to keep in mind are it's usually, though it doesn't have to be, a two-step process. So you create your map, which I'll show you obviously, as a web app. And then from the web app, you create an app, a web app. Now, the web app is usually the public-facing side and has a little sleeker look and design, and you can make it so it can't be edited. So any of your personal data that you created uh, is not exposed and changed by the public or even anyone within, say, our Columbia group. And there's a couple of ways to do that. They're semi-cool if you're a GIS nerd. And so this semi-scary looking graphic here, you know, just shows, you know, you start out with your source data and choose, uh, you know, what you want to put in your map, and then put it into your web page or your web map, and then uh, you can even have that as non-editable, and then from there you go over to your web app, and or you know your public facing web app. And so you know, yeah, what I showed in the introduction video to this class was, for instance, the Tuolumne Fire Information Map. And so that was the public-facing app, which is derived from a web map that County GIS, Madeline Amlin, again, she's from Columbia, and so they've set that up. And so when they make a change on the web map, that change is reflected on the app, but it can't be edited by the public. Okay, so let's sign in to the Columbia College GIS Arc Online account and take a look at the dashboard for your controls and open a map. First, you just type in ArcGIS Online, and I've already got it here because I use it a lot, and that will take you to the ArcGIS login and then sign in. So your address will be some variation of, in my case, the first name there, and I will have added fall 23 or maybe geography 66, and then underscore GIS underscore CC, and then if you're logging in for the first time, you just go ahead and log in, and it'll ask you to create a password, and then it'll give you a security question to answer. And might as well go ahead and check, keep me signed in, and sign in. Now, in my case, this brings me to the main dashboard with our credits and so on. I'm not sure that happens for students. So let's go to content. And this will be what you're working from when you create maps and apps. And here, this is kind of important here in the upper right, is where a lot of your related apps are. So for instance, here you'll find Experience Builder and a bunch of other apps that we'll go over as we have need for them. Down here is Survey 123, which we'll probably be working with. And then also in week 3, I think, I want you guys to go to one of the training videos. And as long as you're in the Columbia College GIS program and you have an account here, you have what's called a maintenance account, and that gives you access to a lot of really good training. Esri has a lot of good training anyway that's free, but it also has another tier of training which would otherwise cost you money, but is available through our maintenance account. And I think I mentioned the particular training session we'll be doing with Experience Builder. One of them is through that maintenance account. So for those of you who are not in my class, unfortunately, you won't be able to access it unless you can get a hold of a maintenance account somewhere. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Those are the main things there. And then you've got a bunch of other headings here, your favorites and places you use a lot. And most importantly, though, is map. That's where we'll go to set up a brand new map, and then from there an app. Although you can go directly in this, you can set it up through, for instance, Experience Builder here, just to set up an app directly if you already have a map to go from. It doesn't even have to be your map. So if you're part of a group working on a project, someone else has created the map, you can go ahead and go into my organization and do a word search for that map one of your team has created. And incidentally, I'm all for you guys working as groups. So if you can divide the work up pretty evenly and make sure everybody's learning as you go, and you have a complicated project, and that wouldn't really be true for the week 1 lessons. I'd like everybody to go through that. But if you have a project, say you're already taking a GIS class, and you want to do something together you're already working on. So for instance, especially if you're working with ArcPro and want to create a web map and then app out of it, that works great. Just keep me informed. Send me a note. Tell me what you guys are up to, how many are working on the project, and the odds are I'll probably be all for it. So for instance, a couple of years ago, I mentioned already the cemetery, the Columbia Cemetery project. Several people were working on it once, and they just did a great job. They mapped each cemetery plot individually. They got the history of many of the people buried there, who were in the early history of the Sonora area, and pictures and pop-ups, and made a web page and app out of it. It was pretty good. And it was also such a big project that it made sense for them all. So just keep in mind the required options that I give here. One person can do them, so that's no problem. But if you're working on something larger and more fun, consider working as a group. Okay, so step 1 of what I want you guys to do is to create a couple of folders here. So for that, you just go to the create new folder, and we'll call this, you can come up with your own name, of course, but we'll call this fall, well, Geography 66, fall 2023, and then web maps. and then OK. And uh, I kind of encourage folks to keep a separate data folder because as you work with stuff, um, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself here, data. And so as you work with stuff, you might want your data kept in a single folder because you may access that from other classes or projects you have. And so if you're creating data and just want to keep track of it, then create another folder for it, and then uh, put your data in there. If you're just taking this class or not taking any others, you can just have one folder. But having two really helps you later on. And I think I've mentioned that starting out your GIS life with a good folder structure and file naming conventions that make it obvious what you have where, it just saves you a huge amount of trouble later on. I did not start that way. I have data scattered all over the place with weird names, and I have spent a lot of time reorganizing data. So you've got your folders, and so now let's start our web map. So you go up here to Map and click on that, and that'll open our first map, and we'll put it to it. Okay, so when you open up your first web map, this is what you'll see. Now, notice in the upper right here, Open in Map Viewer Classic. That's the earlier version app that I was talking about. And for our purposes, we're going to use the new standard view. And, if you've got previous web maps uh, that you've designed in the classic viewer, you can bring them into the new viewer and then add stuff. But if you save backwards, that is, you want to save to the classic viewer for whatever reason, you may lose some of the capabilities. It's not necessarily backward compatible, though it will preserve some of the basic stuff you do. So let's take a quick look at some of the basic tools that you start out with, and as we add data, we'll learn some of the other tools. So over here on the left is your main toolbar. Add is adding data, which you can also do from the layers list. And we have the layers list open, and that will be your table of contents. And so that'll show all of the files or feature classes you bring in, but you can also add from that. So if you click that, you can browse layers on your own computer. You can add a layer from a known URL of a server, add layer from a file that you have, and create a sketch layer. You can sketch something in that'll create a layer. Route layer, same thing, or a media layer, which would be a video or something like that. So if we go to browse layers, for instance, it'll open up on the content you've already created that's in your My Content that you would have noticed from your original dashboard. But if you look at the drop down there, you can get your favorites, go into groups. If you've created a group either within Columbia College or you've been asked to join, or you've created a group that you ask others to join, say for fire or whatever interest group you have, you can create it, and then all of you within that group can share data. Our organization, which is Columbia College, the Living Atlas, which is authoritative, mostly authoritative data uh, for just a huge, huge amount of data over the entire world. It covers things like hurricanes, weather, pretty much anything you can think of. uh, and that's where we'll get some of our fire uh, data from. And then ArcGIS Online, which is, it can be a hodgepodge, but if people working on a specific project have done something interesting, or even if not, they'll mark it, share it with the public, and it will show up within ArcGIS Online. And you can search for and find that. So if they've, for instance, done a specific subset, or you've done a specific subset of uh, data, uh, and you know share it as public. Let's say you've looked at just historical fires in the Sierra, and even though there's a larger historical fires for California, you might have just created a smaller subset, like I said, for the Sierra and put it on Arc Online. And so that could be found by anyone and used so they don't have to duplicate the same work. Of course, the problem is people don't necessarily know, what standards you put into creating that data. So you have to do a pretty good job of entering into the metadata your methods and where the source data came from. But you can get all sorts of fun stuff there too. Fire hydrants of uh, San Francisco, things like that. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And as you go down here, you can add data tables. Base maps is kind of important. This is where you get the center map here is called your base map. And those of you who have not done GIS before uh, need to know that all maps are individual data layers, and your base map, and they're drawn from the base map up. So it's layered, one layer on top of another. So for instance, your base map can be this map that we see right here, which is a topographic map. And let's say you add a road layer, and this will already have roads, but you can get more accurate road layers off Living Atlas. And so then you add that. And then say you were to add Caltrans road closures, detours, and things like that. And so that would add on top of the road layer. And so you want to make sure, and we do this later in editing, you add all your data, and then when you start looking at your map, you want to make sure that everything shows, which means that they draw in an order that shows the data. You don't want to put, for instance, uh, the closures uh, underneath the road layer, because then it'll cover some of the points for that. Anyway, we'll see that as we go along here. But this has all sorts of cool. You can do imagery here, or you can do so-called imagery hybrid. So that has place names and things, and with roads drawn in. This is just pure imagery. And some of these things take a little bit of time, but to draw, depending on your bandwidth, or imagery hybrid. And that, if we zoom in, well, you can see states and place names. And as you zoom in, it'll show more detailed place names. So I'd encourage you to, when you open your first map, get an idea of each of these base maps to see what appeals to you. Here's OpenStreetMaps in a blueprint uh, format, which is kind of, you might find it useful. It's a real basic map, and for some projects, you don't want a lot of detail, and so this might be exactly what you want. And then you've also got the USGS topo map, where you zoom in here, this toolbar here in the lower right. You can zoom. You can also zoom with your mouse, but I'm having some weird with the mouse wheel, and so if I zoom in too much, it just gets very map. Exact copy of all the paper USGS maps from the entire country, and they're kind of neat, but you may not want to use it just because it's kind of busy. There's just a lot of stuff on there, and the idea of a map is to keep it as clean as possible. Anyway, as I said, go through those and get an idea of the maps so you can use them for your own projects and choose, the one that best works for you. And so going down the other list here, you've got charts. We won't be using those. A legend, and those will be the feature classes or data that you've brought in and will show the symbology that you use to illustrate it. Bookmarks. So, for instance, these are pretty important. Um, it's easy to get lost, if you're doing a large project, and I'll show you later how to use this, but you can click on a bookmark and it will save the exact scene you're looking at, so that if you do something, this happens especially in 3D maps, uh, where you hit the wrong button and suddenly you're in southern China or something like that. And if you've saved a bookmark of the area you're working in, you can just use bookmarks and get back there. So that's really useful sometimes. This is save and open, and I will remind you often to make sure to save your maps. Arc Online, unfortunately, doesn't back up. And so you want to make sure that you save early and often so you don't lose data or your view. And anyway, map properties shows what the map's made of. You can print and get information on that. It'll show the metadata that you created for this map. Okay, let's get rid of that. And over here on the right, another useful tool is the search. And so let's say you just uh, Sonora, California, and then that shows up, and you'll get a whole list of matching places, place names. And so that brought us using the topographic map to Sonora. And you can see some of the disadvantages here of using the USGS topo, because of course um, it's got elevation lines, contour lines, which kind of makes the map, just adds another layer in there to kind of confuse the eye. So just for grins, let's go back to base maps, and let's just start out with our basic clean topo terrain map. Okay, and then on the right, you've got another toolbar. These tools will become activated, and we'll use some of them as we actually add feature classes. For the moment, you can do some analysis of terrain. That's a little advanced. We probably won't use it, but that's one of the huge advantages of the new ArcGIS Online app, is that it allows all sorts of analysis as well as better blending of your layers and so on. You can add your own sketch here. This gives you sketch tools, and there's several other tools here. So I think we'll leave it at that. What I want you guys to do is, when you open your map, and we haven't added any data yet, just sort of fool around, make a sketch, and look at some of the other tools, go back and forth with some of the base maps, and see what you get, and just get used to it. A lot of this stuff is, uh, you know, muscle memory in a sense. That is, you remember where the tools are, and you just go right to them, your mouse works faster, obviously, when you remember what everything does. So in the next video, we will actually start adding data to create a fire information map. And uh, see you in that video. Oh, incidentally, for unknown reasons, my mic here has not been doing great. I noticed as I replay some of the segments here that some of it's really garbled. So I'm going to work on that, and I hope I can solve that problem. So far, it doesn't seem like we lose any critical information, but it's not your set. It's seems to be my mic. Okay, thanks a lot. See you in the next video.